Welcome back, everybody. This week we're going to be looking at An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. I really do think that a book should stand on its own merits, but there should be a little bit of background that I provide for this because it probably does skew why I like this book so much if you have a little background. An Absolutely Remarkable Thing is written by Hank Green. Hank Green is one half of the Vlogbrothers, the other half being John Green. Vlogbrothers are a pair of brothers who have a channel on YouTube, and for many years, I think since before 2010, they had a project basically where they would keep in touch with one another by making YouTube videos between one another because they moved apart that were less than 4 minutes in length, and it was one way for them to kind of discuss things and keep in touch with each other. Over the years, this grew into its own kind of movement. Okay, they referred to their kind of community as Nerdfighteria. DFTBA is very common saying among them, standing for Don't Forget to Be Awesome. They are very uplifting, kind of introspective do-gooders kind of the internet. Do-gooders makes it sound bad. I don't know. I personally really enjoy them. I stumbled into the Vlogbrothers, I think around 2012, when one of the related videos on the side of my YouTube was talking about, it had like a picture of a guy who was explaining the Greek debt crisis. This guy happened to be John Green. At the time, I didn't know who these people were at all. And then as I started to watch the channel, I kind of became a little bit of a fan of the Vlogbrothers. Now, between the two, it's kind of like you have John and you have Hank. And now John is kind of known as the author. He is most famous for The Fault in Our Stars, which was a young adult smash hit novel. He's also written Paper Towns, Looking for Alaska, An Abundance of Catherines, Turtles All the Way Down, and most recently the Anthropocene Review. Hank is kind of like the engineer, planner, mastermind behind Vlogbrothers, but also all of their side projects, including Crash Course, which is phenomenal, SciShow, all kinds of things. I think he was the one who started VidCon. Just an incredible person in terms of like putting together interesting projects, and not just interesting projects, but projects that are beneficial to the community and the world at large. So what does this have to do with the book? I guess nothing, but it just goes to say that I'm a little bit biased because I'm previously a fan of the Vlogbrothers, so that fandom or that fanhood, that sounds like something I need for my stove. It's going to skew my perception of this novel a little bit because there are some mixed reviews, although it was generally received positively. If you clicked on this because of the thumbnail, this is pretty much, and I said this in my review of all the books that I read for February, I would bill this as what would happen if John Green tried to write a Ready Player One type story. In one of John Green's videos, he was talking about adapting books for movies, and one of the things he was saying is like he has all this opportunity to write these cool scenes because you don't have to pay anything to construct a scene when it's on paper. And then he said, who am I kidding? I don't know how to do plot. Welcome to my books. Two people talk in a room. Sometimes they go outside. Like bizarrely accurate for his books, but it's the characterization and the insight of books, of John's books, that I find really appealing to me. An Absolutely Remarkable Thing follows April May. I'm thinking of Alaska Young. Already I'm ruining this. And April May is a graphics designer, I believe, and she's just kind of caught up in her own thing. And one day she's walking through New York and she sees this giant robot thing. She thinks it's some kind of art display. Basically, she brings this attention to some other people, and then they realize that all of these big robot things, they end up calling them Carls, they start popping up everywhere across the world, and then it becomes this worldwide phenomenon. She gets a lot of notoriety because she's the first person who found it, and then we go into this big kind of conflict, both within the main character and with society at large, with how we deal with these kind of passive invaders because they're not really doing a whole lot. April May is a character who doesn't seem to let on or let people think that she cares what other people think. Like she avoids, social media and television and all these things. And then once she starts getting some notoriety and some fame via social media, it totally gets to her head and it kind of transforms her into a little bit of a different person, a little bit of an ugly person. So in this novel, two main conflicts come up that I find are particularly interesting. One is navigating social media, and there are certain ways in which that manifests. The other is handling fame. I mentioned this a little bit when it came to my review for Greenlights and how well Matthew McConaughey did it. People aren't taught how to handle that level of notoriety, how to have your life dissected, and how that can impact somebody personally. And in this book, we see April May, who seems to be this person who kind of shuns that side of life. Like, she doesn't watch a lot of TV. She's not really into pop culture. I don't think she really engages in social media much before she actually finds the Carl. And then once she does become super popular, because she's kind of the first one to bring these Carls to light, she gets a lot of attention pushed her way. And the way that manifests both in her personal self-image of herself, what she focuses on, how she sees herself and people around her, and the relationships that surround her life, whether those be her friends, her girlfriend, anything like that. It's not something where the main character is like, oh, I'm noticing I'm being a little bit of a jerk, so I'm gonna fix that. It kind of walks you through the process of them actually becoming the jerk that they're trying not to be. I think that it did it in a genuine enough way that it didn't seem cheap. Could it have been examined a little bit more? I mean, maybe, but it's a pretty fast-paced book. It's only 350 pages and it keeps the action rolling. That's the one thing that I will say about Hank Green, is John doesn't seem to really care much about plotting, although I don't mind that much in his books. I feel like the lack of plot doesn't leave me with a slow pace in John's books at all, but just due to Hank's kind of, I think, more speculative fiction background and the way his mind works, I think it comes around plot. And in one of his videos, he actually did say that he started with plot when it came to this novel, and then it wasn't until he kind of fell in love with the characters and those characters came to life that the story was able to kind of be put on the page in an effective way for him. The other thing that I really liked in this book ended up being how you can take any topic and you can draw a line down the middle and you can divide it into two sides, and how those two sides can be really confrontational with one another. This book also deals with extremism and how somebody who might not be intentionally enforcing this extremism, who might just be voicing concern, doesn't understand how the impact of what they say publicly, as particularly if they're the figurehead of a movement, how that can impact a wide range of people. And this deals with a bigger issue, right? It deals with the whole, should I be responsible for what I'm saying, or should the people who are absorbing what I'm saying have the wherewithal to be able to listen to that critically, and not run with it in a crazy way that manifests itself in chaos and carnage and violence and these extremist manifestations of any particular ideology. And there's a lot of frustration, I feel like, that's built up around that. And between the whole fame aspect and being the face of something via social media, in contrast with this divisiveness and how social media and movements can really be divided and contrasted against one each other and made adversarial towards one another, and how the extremes pull at those two different sides. I think that's really the strength of this book, and I think this speaks to like the generation it needs to speak to, instead of I feel like there's an aging generation that might be contributing to this because they don't necessarily see how it's acting, because we've never had this media format before in the past. And one of the things that I've said all the time is that, look, people keep talking about in schools how kids would benefit more from learning financial literacy than they would cursive writing, okay? Which, that was a bad example. Cursive writing has been useless for a long time. But one of the things when I was in high school is we had media studies, which was an elective course, and it was basically just taught you things like product placement and basically how you might be exposed to certain things in the media that you're not paying attention to, that is done intentionally to manipulate you. Media studies needs to be expanded to understand how to navigate the digital world, because this landscape is something that we're clearly not designed to understand, and it happens at a pace that cannot be controlled or regulated in a way that is effective for society. Even though there are certain phenomena over the past few years that are nothing new, we've seen it before in the past, it has been exacerbated to the nth degree through the facilitation of social media and digital media at large to be able to propagate certain messages and really, again, fan the flames of these adversarial viewpoints between two sides. It's actually extremely detrimental, and I think this is one of the reasons why An Absolutely Remarkable Thing is a very timely book to read. And yeah, for me, it really comes back down to the ability to navigate that space. And again, this makes sense because Hank and John have been staples in the digital landscape for a very long time. They've been involved on multiple different platforms. They've been public figures, both in the work that they do online and in the things, for instance, that John and now Hank publish. So I think this is basically him offloading a lot of the things that he's had on his mind in a fictional form. But one of the things that I think Hank and John do is frame common issues and current issues, I should say is the better way. But we are talking about real human issues that impact us every day, and we're doing it in a fairly effective way. And again, in a way that speaks to the people that need to hear it, so that they don't fall into the same traps that people and other generations are falling into, particularly because those traps are definitely encouraged by the people who are benefiting from them the most, which is the most frustrating. So yeah, I think this book would appeal to somebody. If you're a fan of Vlogbrothers, you already know that this is a book. If you like John Green's writing, I think you'll like Hank Green's writing. And again, if you want John Green's writing to have a little bit more plotting, maybe a little bit less characterization and kind of literariness, then I would check out Hank Green's book. It was pretty fun. I had a good time with it. If you guys have read this one, let me know, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Os.